Thank you, Li Ling, and esteemed panellists. Our next panel is here to discuss driving the region's energy transition forward. Green is the new gold. Please welcome our panellists. Group CEO, PSA International, Mr. Tan Chongming. CEO and co-founder, Air Carbon Exchange, Mr. Thomas McMahon. Country President, Singapore, Sina Mass Group, Mr. Bernad Tan. Director, Uniflow Power Singapore, Mr. Ong Jin Kiat. Sustainability Business Development Director, Schneider Electric, Mr. Jackson Seng. CEO, Charge Plus, Mr. Goji Keong. This panel will be moderated by the CEO of the RHT Green, Mr. Wee Boon Seong.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to all of you. Thanks very much for being with us here this afternoon. My name is Boon Seong, CEO of RHT Green, and I'm the moderator for this panel, Driving the Region's Energy Transition Forward. Green is the new goal. Before we start, we would like to do a poll to get the pulse on this topic. Can we have the poll question, please? The question is, what do you think will be your organization's key focus for ESG in the next 3 to 5 years? You can select multiple answers to the question. The choices are reduce cost through sustainability engagement, reduce carbon emission and optimize carbon tax, green labeling for client engagement, reduce supply chain carbon footprint, generating new revenue stream and business model from sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability reporting. Please scan the QR code to do the answer. Okay, as you do the survey, we will move on. As we are all aware, the world is facing a climate crisis, whereby the global temperature is rising with dire consequences. We are experiencing extreme weather with more hot and cold days, and more typhoons, thunderstorms, and floods. We are also expecting sea level to rise and cause flooding in many cities across the globe. When Singapore was founded in 1965, the immediate crisis then was water. That has subsided considerably with numerous water technologies developed and implemented in Singapore as well as in many parts of the world. Energy is now the key focus. Quoting former Trade and Industry Minister Mr. Tan Choon Seng at a seminar last year, he said that whoever can solve the energy problem will win the future. The consumption of energy in the world has grown unabatedly from about 4,000 million tons of oil equivalent in 1973 to more than 10,000 in 2018. And this will continue to grow. As it stands, almost 80% of these are from fossil fuels, and they contribute about 40% of the world's greenhouse gases. We are therefore being put at the two ends, requiring more energy for our development on one side and reducing output of the total greenhouse gases at the same time. This is therefore a very important topic for discussion, and we are very honored to have a very eminent panel with us today. Let me get them to do a brief self-introduction of themselves as well as the companies they represent. First, we have Mr. Tan Chongming, who is the Group CEO of PSA International. Chongming, please.
Right. Tan Chongming here, Group CEO, PSA International, as Boon Seong said. PSA is the owner-operator of a portfolio of ports as well as inland container depots, warehousing, and so on around the world that helps move containers from across countries, from producer to consumer, distributor, and so on. We started about 50 years ago, and we're continuing to grow now, moving about 1 container out of every 10 around the world.
Okay, thanks, Chongming. Next, we have Mr. Thomas McMahon, the CEO and co-founder of Air Carbon Exchange. Thomas, please.
Thank you very much. Thomas McMahon. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Air Carbon. And Air Carbon was established here in 2019 as a a marketplace for the transaction for voluntary carbon credits to address one portion of our move to sustainability and supporting the decarbonization, not just in the region, but across the world. And we needed a marketplace to be formed up, and the opportunity was presented to us initially from a conversation with Enterprise Singapore here. Could we form a marketplace? And we've successfully done that. We've incorporated some of the newer technologies around blockchain, distributed ledger architecture, and asset-backed tokenization to represent the carbon projects and the registration and the verification, and creating a two-way pricing point for those transactions. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next speaker is Mr. Bernad Tan. He is the country president Singapore of Sinamas Group.
Thank you, Boon Siong. Again, my name is Bernad Tan. Pleased to be here. I represent also, I'm Managing Director of Asia Pulp and Paper, the largest integrated pulp and paper producer in Southeast Asia. I think the presence of such an industry in Asia is also very critical in being upfront with the ESG agenda we set put together today. I think on forestry, we feel the effects of climate change immediately. Extreme weather patterns do affect the growth and harvesting of yields of wood. But more importantly, we also operate in Indonesia, which is home to 1/3 of the remaining rainforest left in the world. We also put upfront with rural communities. And so in terms of development as well as conservation goals, we face them every day. I'm very pleased to be part of this panel, and I look forward to a good discussion.
Thanks, Bernard. We have Mr. Jackson Singh, the Sustainability Business Development Director of Schneider Electric. Jackson?
It's okay. Hi. So this is Jackson Singh here. I work as a Sustainability Business Development for Schneider Electric. So Schneider Electric is a company that providing a digital technology in automation and energy management. So our technology is helping customers to be more efficient in how they use the energy, be it in the buildings, hospitals, data center, or manufacturing sites. So as a company ourselves, we actually put the sustainability top of our priority. We actually integrated all 17 UN SDG goals into our business company strategy as well. And because of this, we are trying to leverage on our experience and helping customers in their sustainability journey as well. So as a company, we are proud to be the most sustainable company in the world, voted by Knight Frank Corporate Citizen last year. So very glad to be here, sharing my view with the audience. Thank you.
Nice. Okay, we also have Mr. Ong Jin Kiat. He's the Director of Uniflow Power Singapore. GK?
Yeah, thank you very much. I run Uniflow Power. We are a very unique engineering company specializing in very small scale mini power station that uses low value biomass and convert that into energy. And energy is the base of all human activities. So we hope that we will be able to roll out our technology very soon to the BOP, the base of pyramid of 4 billion. Essentially, what we plan to do is to disrupt poverty. I'm also the chairman of Zero Waste Singapore, an NGO that advocates waste reduction.
Okay. Finally, we have on the other line Mr. Goji, who is the CEO of Charge Plus. Chi Kiong, please.
Hello, everyone. This is Chi Kiong. So I lead Charge Plus, which is a leading electric vehicle charging solution provider for Singapore and the region. One of our recent milestones was, being one of 2 winning consortiums for the first ever Singapore government EV charging infrastructure tender. And beyond that, we have also announced that we aim to have 10,000 charging points in Singapore alone to catalyze EV adoption in Singapore. But beyond Singapore, we are actively expanding to the region. Right, so in the next 1 to 2 months, you'll see news around Charge Plus having footholds in the likes of Malaysia, Vietnam, and other countries. And our corporate mothership is actually Sunseed Group, which is the largest renewable energy firm from Singapore. And obviously with the heritage of solar energy, there's a lot of synergies with what Charge Plus is doing for EV charging.
Thanks, Chee Kiong. Thank you very much, panel, for the introduction. Now let us go back to the poll results and see what we have got. Okay, it's a bit small. Let me see. Okay, so we have reduce carbon emission and optimize carbon tax, 5 votes. And then there are 3 with 4 votes, which are reduce cost through sustainability engagement, green labeling for client engagement, and generating new revenue stream and business model from sustainability. 2 with 3 votes, reduce supply chain carbon footprint and corporate social responsibility, and with the lowest number of votes, sustainability reporting. Okay, thanks very much for the poll. Okay, now let's move on. As we all know, COVID hit us early last year, and since then, we are now in a very different world from before, and we will have to adapt to the new normal. So let's start with a brief chat on how COVID has affected sustainability and in particular energy supply and demand. Given PSA's international footprint, perhaps Chongming can start off on the impact on the global scene.
Well, thanks, Boon Tiong. I think COVID has been given many names. Unprecedented event in a lifetime, major crisis, humanitarian, affecting lives, livelihood, and so on. But I would like to think of COVID also as an opportunity. And the opportunity lies in how we make use of the crisis to bring ourselves forward. In the short term, indeed, COVID has affected the movement of goods, affected production, and getting products to consumers. We can't open a page of the newspaper today without seeing ports being disrupted, shipping lines having issues, and people complaining that their freight costs are perhaps the highest in time. And it is true. Goods are taking more time to get to their destinations. Production is disrupted. They are not very effective or efficient. Part supply are disjoint. And in effect, I think we are living in a world that is not as productive as we are used to because things are not happening smoothly. Consumption appetite is still there because while people can't travel, they turn their attention to buying things to still continue to live life in as well a manner as possible. And of course, then there is a concern about getting the right medicine to the right places. So in the short term, we are in quite a troubled situation in terms of effective use of energy that to support manufacturing and to support the GDP as we know it. Having said that, I think COVID has also awakened our senses to how urgent it is, this climate issue. You mentioned the climate change episodes, the challenges that we are facing. And I see governments, corporates, individuals all coming together, bringing smart and sound thinking. Now, in the past, there's a lot of, I would say, arm waving or show telling, and quite a lot of incoherence. But I think more and more, I see people coming together with aligned thinking on how to be first science-based, target-focused, and inclusive, and bringing more people into the discussion so that we can shape solutions that are sustainable and executable, and hopefully we can do it fast enough. So I hope that's the legacy, one of the legacies of COVID as we look back at it.
Yeah, thanks, Chongming. We all know that Sinamas has a large footprint in ASEAN, especially in both Indonesia and Singapore. Perhaps, Bernad, you can give us your view.
Thanks, Boon Tiong. Thank you for the time. Let's not beat around the bush. COVID has been a disaster for the human race, and lives have been affected. In Sinamas alone, we have had over 4,000 cases of COVID, among our staff, and 50 of them have lost their lives. If we count relatives, probably 300 to 400. So at a human level, let us first acknowledge this has been an unmitigated disaster. I think certain businesses have benefited from COVID, though. I think you've seen the pharmaceutical companies really making hay with the sunshine. You will also see tech companies benefiting from the work from home tendency that we're all veering towards. And also the commodity companies. So even APP itself has benefited from an uptick in commodity prices as we go forth. But really, I think all businesses have been weighed down by the human cost. So even in Indonesia, while the country continues to struggle with COVID and the effects, many companies, including the Cinemas Group, have been at the forefront of trying to mitigate the effects. This includes donation of PPEs. We have been contributing to the vaccination of the general population. Over 250,000 people were funded by cinemas. And the fight still goes on. Poor people, again, the K-shaped recovery, we have seen also people in the informal labor sector, which especially in Indonesia is fairly large. And they require a lot of help given the fact that a lot of traffic has stopped work there. Again, the contribution of food, rice, and necessities have come from the group. But I'd like to make one observation. In the past, in 2007, 2008, when the world went through an economic crisis, the Lehman crisis, you see certain issues fall by the wayside, and that includes the sustainability. I think you can have a look at prices of the carbon markets. They actually collapsed then. But what has happened in this crisis is rather than sustainability taking a back seat, I think COVID has reminded us even more how important it is. And over the last 2 or 3 years, you've actually seen a very sharp rise in the price of carbon, which shows you again, I think, for the world that the fight to actually cope with climate change is something that we cannot afford to let go, even in the midst of a crisis. And I think that's a reassuring thing.
Thanks, Bernard. Yeah, talking about carbon, perhaps Thomas can tell us more about the impact on carbon and carbon market in the last 2 years.
Me? Thanks very much. Bernard's mentioned, we've seen, I guess it's really awareness. When I began this whole journey back in 18, early 19, it was a very different idea. We had looked at the Paris Accords 2015, what we saw coming in 2021, the imposition on aviation and shipping and how they would have to decarbonize and mitigate. And we wanted to build a marketplace around that. That was our incubator. As we moved into the early days of COVID, obviously we as a company got challenged. We had been very mobile. And in any time you launch a new company, you have to move. You go to where your investors, your clients are going to be. We couldn't. So I had to learn about new technology. And I think we've all adapted. We've become the Zoom culture and all the other mitigation and how we developed and pushed our businesses forward. But at the same time, we had a completely different shift of who was aware of the market going forward. I got to speak with companies that I never thought would be in my purview about. They're asking me, hey, how do I mitigate carbon? How do I decarbonize? How do I come up with a business solution that's not just for my marketing team and my corporate social responsibility team? That was the marketplace we were building. We wanted to build it for the hedger, for the investor. We wanted to unlock carbon projects and create them as an asset class, not just as a tool to put into your yearly PowerPoint. So we've seen an incredible diversity of the interest in the marketplace. We began this with the intent of focusing on Singapore and the region of ASEAN. We've got member firms now. We have 175 member firms. My target was 20. I thought I'd be successful at 20. It's phenomenal at 175, and it's very diverse. And it's across 29 countries, not the 5 or 6 major ones surrounding us here in ASEAN. So that is A, awareness, B, carbon is a real cost. And I don't think the solutions are all based just on carbon taxes. A carbon tax is not a bad thing. It's just one part of the vehicles that were defined underneath the Paris Accords. But when you collect that tax, now you've got to set up a whole new business to distribute that money. You have to now figure out how to invest it and how it gets invested. And so sometimes the inverse of that are carbon projects, the incentivization of change of business as usual. So a forest, you look at a forest and evaluate it. What's going to happen to that forest in the next 10 years? Will it be there? Will it be cut down? Will it be lumbered? Will it be changed into sustainable farming or subsistence farming? or do you want to keep it as a forest? If you want to keep it as a forest, you've now delinked it from all those other economic events, some good, some bad. That has to be incentivized. So the carbon credit, the issuance of the methodology that supports the saving or sequestering of that forest has to be incentivized, and there has to be a marketplace. So the cost gets distributed through the investment vehicle that is a voluntary carbon credit, and we've developed a marketplace to allow that to unlock that economic event for the developers and for the investors and the carbon retirement vehicle. So that is significantly different from where I looked at it 3 years ago. And that is purely as COVID has driven that change significantly. So, thanks.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, talking about technology and solutions, let's bring in Schneider Electric. They are a supplier of solutions for the market. And perhaps Jackson can tell us more about how the demands have changed in the last 2 years, and what are some of the new solutions that will come into the market, and how the investments in these solutions will evolve.
Okay. So we did a survey with 100 companies last year. So we spoke to the senior management in the companies, people from sustainability. So we asked them about their view on this energy and sustainability. So, I mean, because of the pandemic, so we are thinking that the response might be different, all this, but the result came back is actually quite surprising. More emphasis on energy and sustainability instead. So they all feel that there's a need to accelerate this sustainability agenda in the organization, but not the usual way of doing. Yeah, people start to think about how to apply more digital technology to help them achieve their commitment. So a lot of them start to think about what else that they can apply in the organization to accelerate all this. So from our perspective, we start to see more customers asking us about the digital technology, how more so-called data can help them to drive, let's say, for example, energy efficiency in their building. Because during the pandemic period, everybody is looking for a way to be more efficient because the operation is already disrupted, so they need to find a way to balance that. So in a way, the energy efficiency is coming into picture. But they are asking more about how digital technology can help them. So in a way, we are trying to help them to surface more data to them. But this will lead to another problem. With more data, how they can make sense of the data. So they start to ask about analytics, how the cloud platform analytics can help them, point them to the right direction in driving more effective use of the energy in the organization, and that will lead to a better sustainability result. Yeah, and not only that, I think with this focus in the pandemic issue, people start to think about not just the climate thing. I also have customers asking me about how to take care of the employees better because we are managing the number of people coming to the office. How do we manage it better? And then this is actually go in line with the make better use of the facility and being more efficient in using the facility as well. So I can see that the customer are actually more curious about technology, and they're more curious how the technology can help them in this sustainability journey. So in a way, this actually accelerate a lot of development in this area. And I see that customers are making a preparation right now. They're more willing to talk to us to put together not just a short-term plan. They're actually talking about how we can help them in a multi-year journey, start from a small platform, and then the platform can evolve to a larger platform so that can fulfill their long-term sustainability commitment. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jackson. Jin Kiat, besides Uniflow, I know that you also represent a few other companies and different solutions. Perhaps you can give us your view.
For Uniflow, we are quite a unique company in the sense of what we do, because we are actually going to be using the base of pyramid as our market. The reason is quite simple. When these people are basically earning very low wages, not even $100, $200 a month, right? And they can't uplift because they have very poor access to energy, or their energy is very expensive, okay, especially in reference to their disposable income. So when you give relatively low-cost energy using materials that are around them, you are actually able to raise the standard of living from $100 to $200, $300 a day, so they can do other things. Instead of worrying about 2 meals, they may get 3 meals, improve the nutrition of their children, get education. That means their economic viability rises, right? So even at the village or town level, everything goes up. So the whole economy will eventually rise up. So in that sense, we are bringing low-cost energy with our machine. The other way is to look at it is that we need to uplift everybody else, not obviously just the top or the middle. If we lift the rest up, there will be a better knock-on effect. There's more consumer products, there will be better health. So that's where we are coming from. We would actually like to bring this unit into Singapore sooner than later. So, we will, let's see how it happens. The other one that I'm actually covering is I'm the chairman of Zero Waste Singapore, which is an NGO. So we basically advocate waste reduction, not just like going and telling everybody. We educate, we take part, we give talks, we participate, we give workshops, because it's one thing to just talk about it. We have to teach people what to do, and then encourage them to put that in action. Okay. So this is a very important part, that awareness is not just to the government or the big organizations, but if you bring it down to the unit level of the family, then everybody puts in more effort. We have a better effect overall.
Thanks, GK. Back to you, Bernard. What about the ASEAN perspective? I mean, in terms of investments, how do you see that changing?
I think, when we approach ESG issues and moving forward, I think the most important thing is to understand that we need to actually embrace this together. Sustainability and climate change is something that we all have to join hands. It's very easy for countries, firms, and individuals to be very parochial, worry about your own stuff. But really, the truth is, this is a race that we have to engage with everybody. So the more we join hands, the more likely we're going to get a good solution. The second point I'd like to make is that it's very likely that in this collaboration, the burden will be unequal. I think there's some obligation for rich countries with capability to actually reach out and help poorer countries without capability to make the transition. And the reason for this is actually quite simple. This is not a race of the fastest, but the race of the slowest. So if the countries are struggling to make the transition, and we're still not addressing those issues that are of global concern, like emission of carbon, we're still going to lose, right? Singapore may have the cleanest economy, but if, let's say, ASEAN doesn't come along the same way, then, Singapore will still be in a state of loss. So we've really got to join hands to pull this together. Mm-hmm. In my view, developed countries like Singapore, and maybe, the Western developed countries in Asia and Western countries have an obligation perhaps to do 3 things. I think first, to take leadership in science and technology, right, and trying to get the message of climate change and actually embed the science in it. Because obviously sometimes we struggle with agreeing on actually what are the issues and what are the solutions. I think that's the first thing. The second big thing I think Singapore can play a role is finance and markets. So whether it's a green finance, and actually funding the transition mechanisms that are there, or markets like the carbon market. Given the fact that we are a financial center, I think that's the second big thing that we can actually contribute. And then obviously the third is to try to build a consensus. I think Singapore is also in a very unique position, given the fact that we're so small and tiny, that we perhaps don't have
the burden of being, let's say, biased in a particular way with one block or another block. We can be as quite honest, neutral arbiter. So we can also bring that into the equation. So I think those are the three things I'd say that, ASEAN cooperation can take place within the framework of, Singapore playing a role in that.
Thanks, Bernard. How true? I mean, it is the race of the slowest, not the fastest, because we still have to wait for the slowest person to catch up, right? I mean, in a way, it's the same with COVID. Everybody, the fast people can run ahead, but they still have to wait for the slow ones to catch up. If not, it's going to impact on the fast ones as well. Yes. Thanks, Bernard, again. Let's move on. Chongming, from the maritime world, how do you see it impacting the maritime world?
Well, thank you, Boon Siong. And yes, I think there are things that Singapore can do, bringing aligned thinkers and authorities together, and then also being the arbiter to set the pace and try to bring the slowest along if there is that relative speed. Ultimately, will still depend on implementing the right solutions in the right places. It will depend on technology, on industrial adoption, and on being able to make this commercially viable, defensible, as well as inclusive, like for instance through the air carbon exchange. And the maritime industry is no different from other industries that have to consider their contribution to this whole net zero game, which we should all be aligned to in future. If you look at the IEA's recent report, I think they published a net zero emission scenario recently and say, what does it take for us to really get to a point where we can keep to the 1.5 degrees Celsius rather. And you will need to have an energy system at that point in time, which is about 50% electricity, which is 70% driven by wind and solar, the other 30% by other kinds of renewables, including nuclear. And then the other 50% of energy is biomass. Maybe Jinkit will be able to develop on that. And oil and gas that has sequestration. It's a very tall order, and that's changing the energy system. And in the meantime, we have to work with, say, solutions that Schreinder will bring. That is to change the way we use the energy. So don't wait for the molecules, the new molecules to come, but change the way we wire our production systems. A lot of it is in our supply chain. Part of it is maritime. Part of it is on land. But a lot of it driven by whether we have full knowledge of our operations, enough to inform us how to rewire, and not just driven by trade pacts, not just driven by carbon taxes, but by truly a proper carbon measurement. Now, as PSA, we're trying to move in that direction, tackle our Scope 1. Within 20 years, 2 life cycles of equipment later, our Scope 1 emissions in PSA in all our ports will be practically zero. So we'll electrify. Now, industries have to think of these energy scenarios and say, how do my plans actually dovetail these energy scenarios so that the people who are doing energy science and energy development will actually be our reference point on the type of energy, equipment or technology that we adopt, so that by the time we come together, we are not seeking one form while they're producing another. As we go into electricity, we also want to play a part in how to optimize the use of electricity. Now, the port will be a very big user. And being a big user, you can either be a volatile user, which is very bad for the energy system, or we can be a more responsible user of electricity. And that requires new technology that today still doesn't quite exist in a form that we can use it. 5G and so on are just enablers on telling the fleet managed outcome, right, on when to charge, how to charge. But at the end of the day, you still have to twin the user of energy with grid and with the source of primary energy. So all these are things that we have to co-develop. But I feel that one even more exciting area, and that's where companies or solutions like air carbon exchange will come in, is engaging the people who are at the end of the usage of energy. Consumers like you and I, represented by beneficial cargo owners who produce in accordance with our wishes, and then plan the manufacturing and supply chain accordingly. If you go by that account, actually the main production systems whether it's textile, automobile, food, construction, account for a huge bulk of our carbon emissions. Can we look at it from that lens? It's not easy for us because it's scope 3 to all of us. But if we can then start to have enough information to quantify and to influence outcomes, like what Schneider is doing for its users, I think all of us will be able to kind of work better together and change the way we use the energy while we work through the energy choice itself.
Okay, thanks, Chongming. Yeah, talking about electrification and alternative sources of energy, we have Chee Kiong here. I mean, this is definitely down your alley. Yeah, tell us more about electrification and solar energy, which you are an expert in. Sorry, Chee Kiong, are you muted?
Yes, I was about to say that if you look at Southeast Asia as a region, traditionally this region has been viewed as a laggard, right, in terms of adopting sustainability solutions. But if you look closely, one would be able to see that there are quite a number of bright spots, and there are ample examples where there's case for optimism, right? So let me start with Singapore, right? We all know Singapore is a highly dense city, and if space was not a constraint, the ability for Singapore to harness renewable energy, particularly solar energy, would not be a problem. But of course, Singapore being a very highly dense city, it means that Singapore has to do much more in terms of adopting urban solar. So if I use Singapore as an example, the country has articulated a very clear ambition. The country wants to have 2 gigawatts of solar by 2030, of which 1.5 gigawatts has been accelerated to the year 2025. And Singapore is doing it through a variety of means, essentially to overcome our constraints in terms of space. For instance, we are looking at floating solar systems. We have floated solar systems in our reservoirs in the Straits of Johor. We are looking at building integrated PV, where we are even putting solar systems on vertical facades because we don't have enough rooftop space. And we are also extending that to mobile solar. What do I mean by that? We are putting solar systems on temporary land parcels, where the land parcels may only have a shelf life of 10 years before it's caught on, or proper purposes and proper usages, right? So therefore, mobile solar will allow the solar system to be transported to a new site if necessary, if the land is to be called upon for other uses, right? And I will add that Chongming is the chairman of JT Corporation, right, which is the lead government agency pushing for mobile solar in Singapore. Now, so all said, you look at the region as well, Vietnam has been a very good case in point where the country has been very determined to put solar energy as a key plank in achieving sustainability goals. And just in the year 2020 alone, Vietnam was the world's third largest market for solar energy. Now, the country put out 10 gigawatts of solar power systems alone, and that was ranked number 3 in the world. And we see a lot of other countries now getting more and more serious. We see the likes of Malaysia and Indonesia, developing pro-solar policies of late. So I think solar, particularly the fact that the Southeast Asian region is in the tropical sun belt, will become a central plank for us to address the sustainability question. If I can, just move on to EV charging, right? The train has left the station, if I can say, for the EV movement globally, and Southeast Asia is no different. I think for Singapore as well, Singapore has become the beachhead for the region. We have, announced by 2040, we'll be 100% relying on vehicles that are clean energy based and not on the traditional internal combustion engine, format. And Thailand has done the same as well. So Thailand is saying that all new car sales by 2035 will be EV. So again, I think watch the space closely. We think that EVs will also go a long way for this region in reducing the amount of carbon emissions and providing cleaner air for many cities in the region. So I think in short, there's a lot of grounds for us to be optimistic about solar as a new energy plank for the region, as well as the coming wave of EV adoption in the region, by which then EV charging infrastructure will be critical for us to stimulate the EV adoption that we want to desire in this region.
Thanks, Chee Kiong. Yeah, the thing is that what you are doing is very important, and we definitely look towards you in future as well. Unfortunately, we are running a bit short of time. Perhaps we can do the roundup now. There are a few things that I would like to include in the roundup. First of all, I think there's this talk about cross-border collaborations and cross-border issues. Perhaps we can also talk about it in the roundup. And there's also a question from the floor, from Mr. Ron Tan on ecocide. What are the views of the panelists on this ecocide? That means making it a law to make sure that there is no actions. We can take legal actions against people who harm the environment, right? Who would like to start first?
Go ahead. I think you haven't spoken yet.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I think it's actually the laws are there in various forms. All right. Don't forget the main thing is how are you going to enforce it? What is fair? All right. So it's also like secondhand smoke. At what point are you going to be disturbed by it? So you have to understand that it's a very simple comment, but I think there are many effects, that must be considered first. Let's face it, if you accuse somebody, by what measure do you measure? Okay? And that can be very subjective. Okay? And again, coming back to the survey, I must say that I would actually go for the brown one, which is like getting your data correct. And this sustainability reporting is actually the basis of many things. If you don't know what your baseline is, then where do you start?
Yep.
Yeah, and many people must understand that really before you go off, jumping on a bandwagon or shooting off or doing all these wonderful things, look at your baseline. Do your people know what is sustainability? Are they having a good idea or mixed ideas? We have actually people come to Zero Waste Singapore and ask, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. But sometimes their system or where they work in, whether it's in a building or a factory, does not help. But unfortunately, in this sense, there is actually this deep concern among citizens, stakeholders, but the instruction should actually come from the top. It's just like in a family, in one sense, right? Take it from the top that this is our intention. So leadership becomes very important. There are a lot of people that needs to move things along, and leadership is the one thing I would say. Otherwise, we turn out to be, a lot of managers.
Yep, very true, very true. Jackson, your view?
Yeah, I think the sustainability is really a very broad topic. When you're talking about penalizing people for not doing things, then we have to be very precise exactly which area we are talking about. In fact, today, if you look at the laws, all this, there are already laws protecting a certain area. We're talking about human rights, we're talking about labor rights. So those are the laws that are preventing people from abusing on the social aspect under this sustainability. So I say that I think it will evolve slowly, and we are pretty sure that how we are going to be measured is very clear. We can track it, we can enforce it. Then I think that is going to be making sense. But again, I would say that sustainability is really a broad topic, so we cannot just do a one line and cut across everything. It has to be very careful and clear on which area that we want to target. Yeah, and I think some of the things that we talk about is some kind of link to this kind of penalty as well. Carbon tax is one of it. So again, the laws is evolving, and the areas that we are going to focus is going to evolve as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Jackson. Thomas?
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, sustainability is a big word, and it spans such a wide expanse. What we've seen is we started this conversation around COVID, right? And we're in this, whatever, going into our 19th month or whatever it is now, and it just seems like forever, and it will end at one point, but the awareness level has just scaled so rapidly. At the same time, we definitely have a change in weather, right? I mean, if you're whether it's the fires in Greece and the intensity of typhoons and hurricanes and all the other things. But so at the same time, we've got a lot of people that are trying to become. There's a lot of, I guess a better way to put it, there's an immense amount of enthusiasm and awareness that has come up with very little expertise. And it's a very slippery slope when you get to that. And there's nothing, you need the enthusiasm to drive the adoption, but the expertise comes with time. And I think we're in this bit of a point of, we've got some finger pointing. So, and I know I was told as a kid, when you point the finger, there's three fingers pointing back at you. So be very careful when you're the finger pointer. So, but I think the intention is what's significantly changed in these last 2 years or year and a half. And I think that's the momentum. I think I'll mention carbon tax again. A carbon tax is a very easy way to start that process, but the carbon tax has responsibility also. You have to actually take that money and deploy it. And that's a really tough thing to do, because now you've got to be selective. Who am I going to give this money to? And it almost becomes a bottleneck. The marketplace that we're in allows you to have direct investment. That whole idea of incubating around voluntary carbon markets and the projects and sustainability and the diversity in it, and nature solutions are just one of it. But we're sitting in a breadbasket of an opportunity to make a significant difference, to invest in whether it's forestry and all the different iterations of its reforestation or managed forestry or sequestration or peatland restorations or mangrove restorations. And it's not just sequestering carbon, you're now removing carbon. And that's significantly different than sequestering it. That's the opportunity going forward. And I think we're all in a learning process. So the enthusiasm will turn to expertise in time. So we just want to be one part of that.
Yep, definitely. The thing is that I believe everybody plays a part.
Yeah.
And the thing is that we can all contribute towards making it better, right? Bernad?
Well, I was thinking of how to, add to all the comments that have already been made. So, being a forester, I thought I would make a pitch of forest, right? So, I think, again, as we move on to the future, preserving what we have, natural rainforests is probably going to be one of the biggest agenda items that we have. Obviously, it sequesters carbon, and we need to make sure that we keep these pristine areas of biodiversity alive. In fact, what we like to do is regenerate some of this. But we understand the pressures on the forest, and I think Thomas alluded to this. I think you, Boon Siong, also alluded to this, because we are still living in an area where there's considerable poverty. And development continues to remain an objective for all the governments here. So the question of how we get sustainable development while preserving what we have will be a big challenge as we go on to the future. Yep. I was just reminded, I saw the figures today in Indonesia. Because of COVID, the poverty rate has increased. There are 26 million people now living in poverty. And these are people who also have aspirations for a better life for themselves and their kids. How do we do this? Give them that while preserving what we have. I think that will be a key challenge going to the future.
Thanks, Bernad. Chongming?
Yes, I hope we are all motivated by the fact that we don't want global disasters on the earth to end up in a terrible place. And not do it because we want to avoid tax. I also hope that in time we will have a global compact, a system that doesn't just have sticks but have carrots as well, because I think innovation responds to carrots even more strongly than sticks. But in the meantime, we have to work as informed communities, scientists, authorities, business people, to formulate a number of new things. For one thing, I think we have to be clearer on the carbon science aspects. What do we choose? What do we all sign up for? As I said, there are different energy pathways. If we charge down every one of them, we are going to lose. So how do we find the right solutions together? Baselining is very important. Different approaches will give you different answers. Then we have to have carbon accounting, and we know how financial accounting is done, but we're not that sure how carbon accounting will be done and stand the test of time, as there will be tests. People who have to trust it, trade on it. And then, of course, there needs to be carbon economics and carbon currency. It's not just about tax, but the valuation of carbon itself. And finally, to make this all something that the world can actually embrace,
and be dynamic to reflect the solutions that are available as time moves on, the carbon marketplace. That's the place where you have the arbitrage between economics and sound solutions. So we'll have to learn quite a lot and iterate through all this, and it's not one stick or one good idea that will solve it all, and we have to have the right attitude. That's where I'll leave it.
Thanks, Chongming. Chee Kiong?
I want to extend from what Bernard has mentioned earlier on, because he was talking about COVID causing more people to fall below the poverty line. I personally think that a crux of this whole theme around sustainability is really how do you increase the motivation for local communities, for corporates, for governments to embrace sustainability, to accelerate the pace. And the key, in my view, is really dovetailing even more closely environment and economy, right? To continue to provide the narrative, the positive narrative that as we drive more sustainability projects in the region, in Southeast Asia, we're going to create more green jobs, right? More livelihoods, etc. We're going to uplift more people from the poverty line and beyond, right? And if I can cite one example, which is my corporate mothership, Sunseap Group. Sunseap announced a mega project in the island of Batam just about 2 months ago. It's a 2.2 gigawatt solar project in the island of Batam, the single largest solar project to date. But what excited the Indonesians, right, to want to partner with Sunseap is really that we are bringing skill sets to Batam. In fact, we are setting up an academy right on the island to train the locals on installing solar, on operating and maintaining solar systems, right? And we also bring financing and technology to the deal. And therefore, the partnership with the Indonesia was crucial, obviously, for the success of this project. But I think crucially, the clincher was that we're going to create green jobs in Indonesia, right? So I think that the same scenario can be extended to many other projects. As long as we continue to advocate that there's a dovetailing of interest between the environment and economy, I think we're going to get more motivation, more stakeholders to come on board, and to do it beyond just for altruistic reasons, right? And I think that continued insistence that safeguarding the environment and growing the economy, they are not mutually exclusive. I think that messaging becomes critical for us to succeed in sustainability.
Yes, definitely. Totally agree with what Chee Kiong, Bernard, and the rest of the panelists said. I think the important thing is to improve on the development, level up the playing field, and help the slower members of the society catch up. Yeah, because without that, I think we will all be held back as a group, right? So thank you very much to the panel for the great discussion. Unfortunately, we are limited by time and cannot dive deeper into the various topics that you guys brought up. There's certainly a lot more that we can discuss, as this has a huge impact on all of us, right? And we hope to catch up with all of you, both panelists as well as the people out there in the audience, on the role that each and every one of us can play as an individual or also as part of the various corporates that we represent to contribute towards making this world a better place and all of us and the future generations to come a better place to live in. Right? So without further ado, thank you very much, everybody, and have a great weekend.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.